Sayanti, the artist behind Sayanti Finance. Today is another oil pastel portrait tutorial, and I'm going to share some tips and tricks on how to paint a toddler portrait.
I started off with making the eye area a little bit prominent with a brown color pencil, and then I started off with my magenta color and put that in the darker areas. Since this is a toddler portrait, a lot of areas are very rosy because toddlers, as you know, have a rosy skin tones. Their cheeks, the tip of the noses, lips are much more glowing and brighter colored than adults have. When I started off sketching, I kept the lines very light as possible, because that is one of the important characteristics of a toddler face, is that the features are not as prominent as the adult face, and the nose is usually a bit blunter than it would be for a typical adult, and the curves of the lips and everything is a lot softer than in an adult, because the face is still forming. While I say that the face is still forming, I'd like to mention that often toddlers have a little bit fatter cheeks, puffy cheeks, and so the face is much wider than you would usually put in a portrait. In this case, it is not so much, but still a little bit wider than it would be in an adult or in a teenager's face. So once I put in the darker areas, I came back with ochre tones, some orange, burnt sienna, and then finally finish it off with flesh tint. And then for the highlights, I'm using white and then blending it all off with a rag around my finger. I have to do lots and lots of layers of the same color, so you would see me doing the same thing over and over again, just adjusting the colors, lights and darks. And I don't think it is easy to do that with one hand. At this point, I'm bringing in my silicone brush. I call it a brush but it actually is a clay shaper, and I use it a lot for my pastel portrait. It works like magic for blending, so give it a try. All the substances or materials rather that I'm using are listed below in the video description, so check them out. They should have links as well. So for the eye area with the broader pastels, sometimes it gets a little bit tricky, so you can use a color pencil instead, or what I do is I put a lot of color, maybe a little bit more color than required, and then scrape it off with a scraping tool. It may be a tip of a toothpick, or sometimes clay scraping tools and such other. For more detailed information about how to paint fine details with oil pastels, I have an entire video tutorial which is also linked in the video description below, so you can check that out as well. So you can see that I'm consistently working on several layers, and at this point, after getting the face into a little shape, I started on working with the background. I just wanted a general blurry background with a little bit of bokeh feel, so I put a lot of different shades of green and then circles in between, and then I went in between the circles and added more green. I made one side, or rather the righter side, a little bit darker green than the left side. That kind of implicates where the light is coming from and where the shadows are. But you don't have to do that. It's just something my brain is just wired like that, and I feel like I have to do things that way. So after I blended it off a little bit, you can see that I'm not going for a very finished look as far as the background is concerned. I brought in a few more circles, some white circles as well, and blended that off with a rag so that it just has a little bit of bokeh effect. I don't want the circles to draw away all the attention from the face. The face is my subject matter, and that is all that really matters in this particular portrait. This portrait is really special to me because she's my best friend's daughter, and this is one of her favorite photographs from a long time ago, but I thought this would make a special gift on her birthday. because this is one of our favorite photographs. Once again, I am keeping on adjusting the lights and darks till I get to the point where I really like the highlights, lights and darks, and the blended overall look. Till I get through that point, I keep adjusting and adjusting and adjusting, and thankfully oil pastel works beautifully in layers and takes as many layers as you want it to. I still haven't used the pastel matte paper. I have heard that it takes even more layers than I have been able to put in here, or I am used to, so that would be even wonderful. Adding a few highlight areas in the eyes, and then coming back and putting in the black, making the other areas darker. For the last dark areas and some shadows, I'm using purples and blues as well. I used a lot of grays for the eye area. You can see that I'm sharpening some of the fine details, the eyelashes, etc., with a black color pencil. This is obviously not necessary, but I just wanted to make my life a little bit easier and not worry about too much of fine details with oil pastels. And oil pastels and oil-based color pencils, just like this one that I'm using, like Faber-Castell Polychromos, are work perfectly or synchronously with each other, so it is not going to harm your final painting. Now I'm working on the outfit of the little girl, and I don't want that outfit to take away any attention at all, so I've kept it pretty simple, just giving a hint of the collar and the dress, and that would be all about it. Just giving some shadows, lights and darks in areas, and I'm not going to worry too much about the detail of the clothing. And then as soon as the clothing is done, I will move on to the hair area. For the hair, I started off by laying down the darker areas, and I used mostly my dark brown as well as a lot of blue, black, and a bit of purple as well. However, after putting in the initial layer of hair, I will come back and blend all of it and give it like a base tone for the hair. And then I'll come back with my gray oil pastels, mostly grays that I've used for the highlights, and done the mid-tone highlights. Then I came back once again with my rag and blended some of those highlights as well. And in the very end, you will see that I am adding some very few minimal highlights with the white oil pastel, and that would create my final highlight. Some flyaway hairs with the black oil pastel and some with the white oil pastel, and that creates a very natural look, because hair very rarely settles all down unless it is like very highly treated with products. You always have a few flyaway hairs here and there, and that gives the portraits a very natural look, and I guess that is very essential in a toddler face. One thing I'd like to mention at this point, that the toddler eyeballs are pretty much the same size as that is in an adult. Everything else is much less prominent. Eyebrows and cheeks and nose, everything else we would want to make it much less prominent. Other than that, it is pretty much like painting a portrait, but it is, in my opinion, a little bit trickier than painting an adult face, because you have to keep the features really soft. I hope you learned a trick or two in this particular portrait. Let me know what your thoughts were for this painting and portrait, and what kind of other portraits you would like to see. Let me know in the comment section. Do not forget to give me a thumbs up if you like the video, and do not forget to subscribe so that you keep informed about all of my upcoming videos. Stay tuned.